Okay, I'm the moderator for the first part of the day 3. As you already probably familiar with, and we miss IPRES event is the first, and we hope is the only uh, kind of event that we are hosting, and we welcome people on the Zoom platform, and also welcome people in the live stream. And we have about 200 plus people registered for today all over the world, and probably many more following the live stream. And as you already know, this is not a conference, it's not a replacement for IPRES. It's a lightweight and lighthearted kind of sustaining our community and keep the conversation going in between Amsterdam 2019 and Beijing 2021. And as we have had a few chances to get together and meet in person, but we still have more to talk about than ever. And we call ourselves the Friends of IPRES, feel the need to create the opportunity for everyone involved in digital preservation to meet virtually and exchange stories and challenges. And we already had 2 days of successful events, and today is the last day, and we hope that we can have the as successful as before. And we have some kind of housekeeping matters, and we invite people to turn off your microphones and cameras, of course, except when we take group photo and when you have to speak. And give yourself an identifiable name on Zoom, and remember that we have a chat box where you can place comments and questions. And those collaborative notes will be available. And as we understand, the digital community is an open and inclusive community. We encourage diversity in all its formats and is committed to making the community events accessible to everyone who wish to engage with the topic of digital preservation. And we ask all those attending this WMIS IPRES event to be positive, accepting, and sensitive to the needs and feelings of others in alignment with the value stated in BC inclusion and diversity policy. And I would like to remind that we are going to record the presentations, and there will be a live stream. And of course, we only record and stream these sessions, not the social events together. And we encourage you to tweet and use other social media formats about the presentations and discussions as much as possible. And I will give a little introduction about today's structure, which is a little bit different from the day 1 and the day 2. And we have the first part as actually a number of presentations from China about the digital preservation activities in China. And then we have the 15-minute break. And then we have the session 1, which actually is the part 2. Session 1 will have 3 streams dealing with 3 different topics: the digital preservation in 2021, picking up the threads of 2019, and the best of digital preservation in 2020. And then we have another 15-minute breaks, and then we have the relaunching of the IPRES 2021 in Beijing, and thanks and acknowledgement. And then we'll have the social events and getting together, and as what we did for the last 2 days. The first part will have 4 presentations, and me again about the challenges to preserving emerging research infrastructure, and Professor Sun from Forbidden City Museum about the progress of digital preservation in the Palace Museum, and then Professor Yimin Pao from the Chinese National Center for Bioinformation about the digital preservation in genomics, and Professor Zhenxin Wu from the National Science Library about the progress of National Digital Preservation Program. And for the session one, actually the part two, the parallel streams, we will have the chairs and technique that help us to moderate those sessions. And then the last part, well, the luncheon part will have Professor Dongrong Zhang to reintroduce to the IPRES 2021, and Helen from, as the program committee representative to introduce to call for contributions, and the two chairs of the organizing committee will make a welcome message, which will be delivered by me. Then we will have a IPRES Beijing video to welcome everybody. So this basically is the makeup of the today, and we apologize for the timing, and we understand that a lot of people still in the early morning, and a lot of people in probably the evening, and so we hope that you can have your drinks, coffees, or other things, and we would like to, we wish we could deliver that to you, and let's keep going. Okay. Now, and let us start with the first presentation, which will be by me again. And I'm asking a friend of mine here at the National Science Library to keep the timing for me, and to help me when my time is up. And also I would remind all those other presenters today in this part to keep to watch for the time. Okay. I'll bring up my presentation, and if there is any problem, please yell out, and as loud as I can hear, and so I will have someone to fix it. So actually my topic is about challenges to preservation of the emerging research infrastructure. And there will be four parts. The first part would be the background. Actually, this is an exercise we are currently doing with the strategic planning for the National Digital Preservation Program for the next 5 to 10 years. The National Digital Preservation Program, which will be introduced in detail by Professor Zhenxin Wu later in this part, is serving Chinese research, development, and education and library communities. At the moment, it's mainly for published scholarly resources, and it is supported and actually under auspices of National Science and Technology Library, which is a national STM research information service platform. It itself is is currently conducting a strategic planning for its next 5 to 10 years. In this process, we realize that things are changing so fast, so we have to be envisioning the R&D information resource environments and recontextualizing the infrastructure information service. What is the information service? What information service mean in this kind of environment? And then redefining the ways and means to ensure sustainability and sustainable access to R&D information resources. And actually, this is envisioning kind of efforts and a thought exercise, hopefully leading to a roadmap. And so now we come to the second part, and we had a look at a preliminary look at the R&D information resource development. We understand that there are or increasingly important non-traditional publications. Of course, open access publications and the preprints, which are playing a key role in the fight against COVID-19. And of course, we have now institutional and domain repositories covering a increasingly wide scope of information resources. Then we notice and with the missing of reference works. As a librarian, and I was brought up, actually first work of my library career is working with reference works. But we notice now they're totally missing from our local collections. But many of them are still very critical for identity and for education and for knowledge heritage collections, like the Springer Materials kind of database, YD protocol database, and Encyclopedia Britannica, and the statistic databases from World Bank and the OECD, and professional handbooks, yearbooks, and even some of the very important citational and analytical databases. And many of them are replaced by digital commercially service systems, but as e-journals, and there is no guarantee that for their sustainability and long-term access. And so this become a critical problems. Then we notice that the scholarly records are evolving, and things that traditionally not in the scope of library collection and not in a scope of digital preservation now becomes a key parts, like the data, methods, tools, and processes, etc. And even we are defining the research and development objects, upstream and downstream, like the funding and research plans and design, funding projects, research plans and the designs and current research information management systems, like the researchers, the institutes, evaluation results, etc. They become those will become the parts, integral part of what we call the scholarly infrastructure or R&D infrastructure. Of course, we have the ubiquitous research data and the preservation needs of it. And also we notice that websites now become really primary publishing platforms for many, like funders, government agencies, learned societies, institutions, and the big projects and the scientific community. The many important resources like the trend analysis, like the program initiatives, roadmaps, policies, evaluations are primarily published or delivered through websites. And this again become a challenge to us. And so how to preserve the online science, that's become a challenge. And of course, now we have the information, the research infrastructure, digital research infrastructure. And those infrastructure have a lot of what we call the organizational resources. Here we have, on the left side is the Chinese STM resource sharing networks, covering research services, like computing services, data, facility, material, publications. On the right side, we have the European Open Science Cloud, which have a lot of services and resources available. And then, how do we navigate or help people to navigate among those or within this kind of environments? And we could have a lot of individual resources, but then if those resources are close to each other, if we can't help our users to navigate, to connect, to interoperate between or among them, then we still don't make the best use of those the environment. So the resources that supporting discovery, linking, integrative use, etc., of all the kind of cross-border resources of those kind of environments become increasingly important. Those resources include registries, aggregators, and the third-party the services. And here we give some of the examples and just part of them and right here. So we come to the third part that then we have to say that what is sustainable access to information resources in this kind of environment. But first, we have to say, well, what environment we are actually fighting, we are fighting ourselves in. And here are some of the kind of reminders for the future to come, that we have publishers to, well, this on the left side, it's an outsourced effort. They are developing research operating system. They are helping institutions to develop their digital research and education infrastructure. On the right side, and it's, I guess it's from Nathan and Francis about what they are going to cover. And all these big publishers are saying that they are not going to be publishers anymore. They are builders and developers and coordinators of the information and research infrastructures. And so that gave us some kind of urgent the questions and the challenges. And we, of course, on the one side, or first with the expansion of information resources beyond traditional publications, all the under the objects and elements are digital resources, and they are organized. They are being organized, being provided, and being used by all our authors. And the formerly informal kind of resources become now critical. And all of them are logically linked and integratively used by our authors. The whole become more important, probably, than individual parts. But they are still very, very fragmented, isolated, and with uncertain future. And but our users already know and already kind of stimulated by our talking about intelligent and merging, intelligent and integrating services, and would like to have this integrated access across all the types of resources and all the types of services, and dynamically discover and analyze, link, and organize, etc. And they are very willing to use all the innovative technologies like AI. And another part of the story is that many commercial players, as we talked about, are getting into the field, and they are trying to grasp the kind of leading positions, and they take this as a new opportunity and to sustain their hold of our scholarly communication and our research and development efforts. And so in this background, and we have to contextualizing and for what is the information service, or what we call the infrastructural information service. And this is a study by OCRC that made it clear that it's time for us to shift from collection-centric model of excellency to engagement-oriented model, supporting distinctive and integrating needs of our users along their workflows. And of course, the figure is only kind of indicative, and not just the individual institutional resources, not just application resources, not just the data resources, but also all the digital the resources, the objects, elements in the digital science or digital education, and even digital culture, etc. And so that represents a challenge for NSTL and NDPB as a national service, who probably is far beyond enough that just providing an isolated resources and collections. And we have to meet the situation that user-centric and have to utilize the potentials of the connected information environment. So in addition to providing, well, what we are providing now, probably a challenge is to provide infrastructure information services. Of course, we can rely on other segments, sectors like the research data, like the archiving, like the educational resource, etc. We, as part of the core environment, probably we should be proactively pursue the development of those what we call the infrastructure information resources and supporting user navigating and interoperating across types of resources and services, and helping not just users, but also helping the resource providers to be able to fit into this infrastructure and fit into this connecting and interoperating environment, to integrate, to adapt dynamically to the user needs and the process, adapt dynamically to the characteristics of other resources, then to develop new types of services, like the organizational services, such as registries, like the discovering resources, like as specific search engines, and like the analytic, the mapping and the converging services, etc. And so for NSTL, and so we have to ensure the coverage of new scholarly resources, ensure the capability of providing infrastructural information services. And so for NDPP as a service to provide sustainable access to information resources, then our sustainable access probably should be extended to those resources that beyond the traditional scholarly publications and even traditionally scholarly resources, and to other types of resources, the services and the capability. And then you have to redefine the ways and the means, and including, well, meet the complexity of the environment. We have those resources and the services have different provision models and different complex concepts of content, and require different and flexible and individualized ways and means to ensure sustainable access. We had some experiment. We have a GoA service. It's collaborating with more than 100 publishers to have their open access publications stored locally and as a backup service. We have the archive.org China mirror site and working together with China Archive services. And we have the test for preservation of reference work databases with a small one and then with a larger one. And so this is basically a target resource framework, including some of those from the commercially published resources to the organizational information resources for the infrastructure. Then here we have the preservation service program framework. Different types of resources, we may have different types of what we call the preservation services. And of course, this still are the explorative kind of exercise. Okay, then and possibly we have different kind of approach to deal with these new issues. And we understand that this is really something quite new to us, and we would like to use this as a kind of exploration and also an opportunity to collaborate with our international partners, including those in the commercial world. So this is basically a thought exercise and a invitation for critics and for suggestions and for collaboration. Thank you very much. I understand that we still have a little, one or two questions.
We got one question from Paul.
Thank you.
Which is there a danger in allowing commercial actors to provide RDM infrastructure? Are we not citing to community app for Facebook style take over our data?
Sorry?
I think let's talk about is that danger to let the commercial operator to take over the data? I guess he's wondering to know, is that okay to let the commercial parts to access our data like Facebook to have our data?
Well, we understand that this have additional challenges, and at this moment, since we are just beginning the investigation of the different the approaches and the issues involved with different approaches, that in principle, and I would think that we would be open to collaborations from commercial partners. But we do understand the special kind of issues represented from there, and I would think that this would be a topic for further discussions and tests.
Okay, thank you, Professor Zhang. I think it's time up for the next presenter.
Okay, so the next presentation will be from Professor Sun from the Forbidden City Museum. And Professor Sun, you bring up the, share the screen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we see you and not yet.
Okay. Can you see the screen now?
No, not yet.
Okay. How about now?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Could you play the screen? Play the slides. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Sun Jing, working in the Palace Museum. The Palace Museum is located in Beijing. It's a place that Chinese and foreign tourists will definitely visit when they come to Beijing. And although the Palace Museum limits the number of visitors to 80,000 per day, the number of visitors exceeded 19 million in 2019, continuing to be the most visited museum in the world. And we have been doing informatization for 30 years, but the Palace Museum is not well known in the field of digital preservation. The year 2020 marks the 6th centennial of the construction of the Forbidden City and the 95th anniversary of the establishment of the Palace Museum. In such a special year, I'm honored to be invited by the IPRES organizing committee to participate in this event to introduce the digital preservation of the Palace Museum. And the title is More Convenient, More Sharing, the Progress of the Digital Preservation in the Palace Museum. And first of all, I would like to introduce the Palace Museum. The Palace Museum is established in 1925. It's located in the Imperial Palace of Ming and Qing dynasties, which also known as the Forbidden City. The Forbidden City was built from 1406 to 1420 by the third emperor of the Ming dynasty. After its completion, it served as a residence and court of 24 emperors. The Forbidden City is the world's largest and most complete wooden palace complex, covers an area of more than 1 million square meters. In 1987, it was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Palace Museum not only manages the Forbidden City, but also manages the other 4 imperial building complex and exceeded 1.86 million sets of precious cultural relics. These relics mainly from the collection of the Forbidden City. The collections are divided into 25 categories, the vast holding of calligraphy, paintings, ancient literatures, ceramics, and bronzes. Foreign cultural relics and other antiquities of the imperial collections make the Palace Museum one of the most prestigious museums in China and the world. In addition to the buildings and the collection, the Palace Museum actually manages a huge amount of information related to our cultural heritage and the museum. The objects of information management are divided into 2 aspects: information resources and information activities. Since the establishment of the museum in 1925, the management of cultural heritage information has begun. In 1989, the Palace Museum began to promote digitization. After 30 years of informatization construction, the Palace Museum has gradually formed a work pattern of 4 parts: administrative management, relic entity management, heritage monitoring, and digital resources management. And we has accumulated huge information resources and established a complete process of development and utilization of digital resources. But how to manage the ever-increasing digital resources is always a difficult problem. Our goal of informatization is to provide people more convenient, efficient, and continuous information service. In the progress of informatization construction, many new types of digital content have been produced. We have been thinking about a question, which is what digital content can be included in the category of digital objects that need to be preserved for a long time. At present, we have identified these 8 major categories of important digital objects that need long-term preservation. The data volume of these digital objects is huge, and the data formats are becoming more and more complicated. The demand for information service has also changed. How do we manage these digital objects? According to the needs of the museum, more than 20 information systems have been developed, including collection information systems, image systems, collection restoration systems, etc. At present, we have entered all pieces of collection information and published it on the official website. And after more than 20 years construction, we have established a set of standardized workflows and standards. At present, we have taken about 600,000 sets of collections and more than 1.5 million images, which meets many needs. For example, cultural relics images continue to be shared through the internet, such as websites, social media, and mobile apps. Last year, we launched a new digital cultural relics library called Digital Collections Online. Released more than 50,000 pieces of images, and it will continue to release digital objects to the public. At the same time, we also launched The Legend of Famous Paintings, a program that releases ultra-clear images of famous paintings for the public to browse online, with an image accuracy of up to 300 dpi. Of course, cultural relic images are also used for offline product development, such as the production of books and categories, and the cultural and the creative productions, and the high imitation works of calligraphy and painting, which are used to assist the exhibition and effectively elevate the contradiction between the protection and the utilization of French ancient paintings. We are also continuously collecting video materials related to objects and people in the Palace Museum. The amount of video data has exceeded up to 100 TB. Relying on this data, we have produced a lot of video works. For example, we have produced more than 30 documentaries, which show the public how to restore of cultural relics and ancient buildings, or the beautiful view of the cultural heritage and so on. The video works of academic lectures by experts are also continuously shared with the audience through the internet. We also have applied 3D digitization and VR technology to the protection, exhibition, and research of cultural heritage since 2000. After 20 years of efforts, we have made 3D data of the Qing Dynasty Forbidden City of over 62 hectares, and also made over 50,000 square meters of heritage architecture, and 1,300 sets of collections 3D documented in great precision. Based on these 3D models, we have developed many digital interactive works based on them and provided many new experiences to the public. For example, we have developed 3 virtual reality programs based on large format screens. Without going to the Forbidden City, people can experience the magnificence of the Forbidden City in the theater. There is also an interactive program, Digital Cabinet of Curiosities, a VR work that can manipulate 3D models of collections. We also apply VR and AR technologies to heritage architecture preservation and collection conservation, archaeological research, and improving accessibility. Because we have many different types of digital works, so we have assembled some digital works into thematic digital exhibitions. A digital gallery is set up on the end gate of the Forbidden City, which is open to the public. At the same time, themed digital exhibitions can also go out of the Forbidden City and go to various places at home and abroad. At present, the digital exhibition hall has received more than 10,000 visitors. The Palace Museum also has massive internet data, mainly operated by official websites and social media. The Palace Museum has 3 versions of websites: Chinese, English, and the youth version. A large amount of data is published on our official website, such as the online program panorama of the Forbidden City, shown in the slideshow. Currently contains 1,743 panorama points, covers all the open areas of the Forbidden City, even including the unopened areas. Is very worth seeing. On the official social media platform, there are 8.84 million followers on Weibo, 1.83 million followers on WeChat, and the hashtag "in the love of with the Forbidden City" is already 2.05 billion viewers. In addition, we have also produced 10 mobile apps with over 6.5 million downloads, and the app Daily Masterpiece is the most popular. Since we have so much information, what challenges have we encountered? Like other museums, we are also facing problems with such rapid data growth and complex data formats and so on. Our solutions is to complete top-level design, refining workflow, integrated systems, and improve infrastructure construction now. For the digital information, we observe the whole information chain, pay more attention to academic research, and strengthen the cooperation between culture and technology, and promote the development of information to knowledge, and then to the intelligence. For example, we are building museum knowledge library with the help of AI now. And there is a new opinion to help culture
Professor
and technology.
Sun, and you have
Okay.
about 1 minute. And sorry.
Okay. So now let's jump to the So let's talk about the fact of the COVID-19. The Palace Museum has been closed for more than 3 months this year. After the reopening, the number of people that could visit the Palace Museum has also been limited, but our online data has increased significantly. So these statistics shows that the public has a great demand for information on the Forbidden City. It's urgent for us to provide more information. So finally, I hope that next year's conference was held successfully on schedule, and I look forward to meeting you again. Thank you all, and welcome to visit the Palace Museum. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sun. And we will take one question, and then we will go on to Professor Bao for the next presentation. Is there any quick question?
Any questions for Professor Sun?
Professor Sun, could you release the, okay.
Okay.
Release the screen sharing.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So, we still have Q&A at the end. So now we welcome Professor Bao to have his presentation. Professor Bao, you there? Okay, I see you. Okay.
Yes,
Good.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. And you can play the slides.
Okay, can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And first of all, I would like to thank Professor Zhang and the organizers for inviting me to give the talk. So my talk is going to focus on digital preservation in genomics. So in the field that I'm working on, and particularly I'm talk about development in China. So I'm from China National Center for Bioinformation. And when talking about digital data in genomics, I have to start with the International Nucleotide Sequence Database Collection, short RSDC. So this is a consortium consists of 3 parts. And the first is NCBI, National Center for Biotechnology Information in the US, EBI in Europe, and DDBJ in Japan. So these 3 major centers were established either in late 80s and early 90s by various governments or international organizations. And they established international standards for genomics data, and they exchange data daily and held annual meetings. And one important thing is that in the field of biology, before papers are published, if there are data associated with the paper, and the consensus is that the journals require these data deposit into international recognized databases. So what's the situation in China? As some of you may probably know that big data have been generated from large-scale national research project based on genome sequencing. So there's a tons of data generated. For example, this is from a website estimated that for each person, all kinds of data, for example, clinical data, imaging data, etc., and the omics data, and the total volume for each person's data is about 10 terabytes. So that's a lot. So for example, it is not uncommon for current research to involve, for example, 10,000 people in the study. So if we're talking about this 10 terabytes of data each person, then the total data will be 100 petabytes. So that's huge. And so for the data generated in China, as I said, there are lots of data being generated, and it is estimated that at least 20% of these data in INSDC are produced by China. So that's a lot. So that brings some issues or challenges. First of all, there were lack of data sharing in China. So I summarize few of the reasons. The first one being that there were no policies to enforce data sharing. So this is not, although there are some regulations, requirements, but actually these were not heavily strictly enforced. And the second of all is that data sharing at INSDC, the International Consortium, is mostly, the third issue is there are technical problems. For example, international network bandwidth. And so for people outside China, probably it's hard to imagine that actually the internet speed to outside China is very, very slow, although it's not a problem within China. But that's not the case for international ones. So it's very difficult for people to transfer large number of data to those international databases that I mentioned. For example, we estimated that for a data set of 1 terabytes, it takes at least 2 weeks to transfer to NCBI, for example. So that in practically, it's very difficult for people to share the data into international databases. And another issue is, of course, the language barrier that we face. Although the overall English skills for researchers in China have been improved dramatically in recent years, but when you talk about these technical terms when submitting data, there are still issues. So I had firsthand experience when I worked at the NCBI. I've been there for 16 years and had a lot of experience when my colleagues, taking data submission from China came and asked me for help to explain some of the things to the Chinese researchers in Chinese. So that's so these kind of technical issues make such sharing very difficult. I think I missed one. Oh, okay, that's fine. So, so as I said, we are generating large number of data. So I just give you an example of a recent thing that happened, that one hospital generated 500 terabytes of data, and they want to submit, and they published a paper in Nature, and they want to, by the requirement of the journal, they need to submit the data into a international database. So for that size of data, you can imagine that it's almost impossible to transfer over the internet to the US. So what they did was they shipped not the hard disk as people usually do, they shipped the whole server directly from the sequencing company and through this express service like the UPS truck directly to us. And we transfer the data directly from the server into our databases. So that's just one example of how difficult it is if we were going to use the international databases. Also, the last issue is that even there were no issues, the above mentioned issues. There's still no incentive for people to share data, because what do you get? Because sharing data take a lot of effort, a lot of manpower and resources. So why do people need to share the data? There's no benefit from that. So okay, so to take care of these issues, our institute, Beijing Institute of Genomics under Chinese Academy of Sciences, CAS. So we established a big data center for archiving these data. So we started officially launched, the center was officially launched in 2016. And so this is our resources, including various, we call omics data, genomics, variations, genome methylation, etc., and some knowledge-based databases. So these are a brief summary of all the resources that we have. And we take care of the whole life cycle of the data, from metadata collection and sequence data storage, data submission and release, quality control, and service system. So it's a complete closed cycle. And this, as I said, we established in 2016, and within this short 4 years, and our data size increased dramatically, especially in the recent year. So the total data that we has over 5 petabytes now. And also mentioned about requirement for journal, requirement by the journals. So we supported about 350 articles representing 170 journals. And also our effort being recognized by colleagues of international institutions. And this is one example that in one of publications, they list our big data center from Beijing Institute of Genomics together with NCBI and EBI, remember these are two of the three major international journals, and together they call these major global centers. So this is 2 years in a row. And also in terms of recognition by journals, we actually, our GSA, one of the database I just used as an example, was recognized by Elsevier as one of the 5 recognized genes and gene expression databases, and 2 of them are from Europe, and 2 of them are from the US, and the 5th one is from us, the only one in China and also in Asia. And so, when I talk about the issue in China, our institute is not the only one that's try to take care of it. And the Chinese government actually also realized the issues. So in 2018, the government issued this regulation for scientific data management. And so basically what it says is that the government will establish national scientific data centers. And also there's a mandatory requirement for deposit data from a government-funded project into these national scientific data centers. And very quickly in June last year, the first batch of 20 such national data centers were established by the government, and our institutes host one of these such centers, and it's called the National Genomics Data Center. And shortly after that, last year, the government also formally established China National Center for Bioinformation, CNCB in short. And briefly, this institute is affiliated with our institute, and basically it is charged to do bioinformation data archiving, storage management, and sharing, and to perform frontier research work, and also achieve translation and application. So, it's jumping. And we also realize for long-term preservation of the data, it's really important, and also large-scale data sharing, it's really essential for us to collaborate with international data centers. So we've been working very closely with all 3 parts of this INSDC consortiums, including DDBJ, NCBI, and EBI. We're doing visiting, and we were invited to give talks to their annual meetings, which is usually close to those partners. I think we are the only exceptions that are being invited to give talks, to report our progresses. And also we visit NCBI, and we send our staff for them for training and to learn the most advanced, the recent techniques. And also we visit EBI and talk about further collaboration. So since we're talking about the COVID-19, and our center, actually the National Center for Bioinformation, the very first major task is to establish this 2019 novel coronavirus resource. So this resource actually has 6 major parts, including the sequence resource for the COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2 genome sequences, and the second one is for all coronavirus sequences. And we did sequence analysis mostly about the genome variation, which is crucial for drug development and vaccine development, and also testing kits. So we analyze this, and we release this information. And also we put some online tools and also including clinical records and literatures. Okay, and in terms of collaboration, we are also working with NCBI to establish a mechanism for quick data sharing. So this is one of example. This is one piece of genomic data. So we collaborate with NCBI. So in this case, for the sequence ID, usually the NCBI will have their own ID, but in this case, since we provide this, so they also include the ID from our database, and also they acknowledge the contribution of our work. And our resource has been heavily used by users outside China. So this is a brief static about the ratio of international page view and international visitors, and you can see that it about 60% at some point. And this is a summary of our users across the world, and we've served users from 175 countries and covering 171,000 users, unique users, and our data being downloaded 132 million pieces. Okay, so just give you a summary. The take-home messages are genome data archiving at INSDC is a consensus for the community because they've been there for 30 years, and they usually it's a database for people to share the data. However, it should not be taken for granted considering technical difficulties that I mentioned. So regional and national data centers can play big roles in promoting data sharing and archiving, thus are complementing the INSDC. Lastly, data exchange mechanism can be established between local centers and INSDC to facilitate data sharing and preservation. So a big thanks to the funding agencies and hard work of our center. Okay, that's it, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Bao, for presentation and for keeping up with the timing. And I understand there's a number of questions. And Paul from JSIC, and you do have a question. Am I right?
You mean the
for the COVID presentation? My guess is there a standard period for data that must be kept available?
Yeah,
right?
so different country and the funding agencies have different policies regarding this the time period that the data must be released. So for different types of data, for example, whether it's a human data or it's non-human data, they have different requirements. So as I said, different countries and different agencies have different policies. And in China, we are at the early stage of establishing these kind of policies. So we're working very closely with the community to establish this kind of standard.
Okay, and any other questions? We have one.
We have one more. What is the role of the national archives in gate-based system that your institution developed?
Can you repeat that? Is the question in the chat box?
Yes, from Harold Verona. What is the role of the national archives in the gate-based system that your institute developed?
So the role of data sharing in China.
What is the role of national archives for the data preserved by your institute? Is that the question?
Well, actually, so since we are as I mentioned, we are one of the China National Scientific Data Centers, and since now the government established this requirement for mandatory data repository, so so theoretically, all the government-funded projects need to deposit their data into our database. So I think that addressed that question. Am I right?
And also, my guess is, and correct me, Professor Paul, that this national data center system itself and actually act as the national archives for research data. And it's been discussed and probably been already in the experiment as part of the kind of mutually collaborating in backing up the data deposited in individual data centers. So I think the itself will be building the robustness of the national kind of archiving for research data.
Yes.
Okay, and we thank you for the questions, and we still have, well, we will have the next presenters, and so Professor Bao, would you release the screen, and then we will have Professor Zhenxin Wu to give the presentation about the progress of the National Digital Preservation Program, please. Professor Wu, and could you start the slide and your presentation?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Okay, we see the slides.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So I'm Zhenxin Wu from National Science Library, Chinese Academy of Science. I'm the member of organizing group of WMIS Prize. I'm also the member of program committee of Prize 2021. Today, I would like to introduce the progress of National Digital Preservation Program, China. We call it NDPP. Actually, the chair of this session, Professor Zhang, is the director of NDPP, and some of my colleagues are also here. Back to my presentation. So today, there will be 4 parts in my presentation. First, a simple introduction of NDPP. NDPP was set up in 2013. It is a cooperative effort to preserve scholarly digital publications, mainly include e-journals and e-books in and outside China, and guarantee long-term sustainable access for Chinese R&E communities. NDPP is funded by NSTL, National Science and Technology Library. NSTL is in turn funded by Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Science and Technology. Actually, NSTL is the national platform for STM information resources. NDPP's operations are managed by National Science Library, Chinese Academy of Science, which I work for. For now, there are 3 archiving service institutions, NSL and the Institute of Scientific and Technical Information of China, and Beijing University. NDPP is mainly responsible for preserving important STM scholarly digital publications and coordinates to preserve other important scholarly, educational, and cultural digital resources. So, at first, As an integral part of national STM information resource infrastructure, NDPP is a national system, which is recognized and supported by national libraries community with more than 200 major libraries in China. The second, NDPP is a trusted system based on detailed formal agreements with publishers and other resource providers. NDPP is operated under a framework of trustworthiness measures, including legal, organizational, administrative, technical, personal, and financial ones. NDPP is following international standards and guidelines such as OEIS. It's first a dark archive. It can be accessible only under merely confirmed trigger event. Finally, being funded by public funds from Ministry of Science and Technology, NDPP provides a public service. It's free to all the resource providers and libraries. Since NDPP is formally set up in 2013, it has gone through 4 main stages. And this year is the last year of the 4th phase under its plan for 2013 to 2020. From a pilot project to a national cooperative program, its aims are to set up more preservation centers, archive more STM digital resources, operate an effective preservation network in nationwide step by step, and make itself a trusted and sustainable repository. So next, I will provide more detail about it. The first measurable indicator, what we have archived. Actually, NDPP has archived major Chinese literature database, such as Chinese VIPS, Wanfang Data, and Shangwei Global Product Database. Meanwhile, we have archived data of 4 major international commercial publishing groups, including Spring Nature, Wiley, Elsewhere, Taylor and Francis. Yeah, there are also many important resources of learned societies in our archived list, such as IOP, RSC, OUP, CUP, AGU, etc. Now, there are currently 3 archiving nodes in NDPP, respectively, National Science Library, Institute of Scientific and Technical Information of China, and Beijing University. NDPP's technical system is a distributed preservation architecture. These 3 nodes have deployed the same archive system, work together with the management node, finally form a preservation network. NDPP has succeeded in its planning and implementation and has established an archive system. This system, which is designed based on the OEIS standard, includes transmission manager, ingest manager, archiving manager, and dissemination manager. There are 2 services inside dissemination manager, access and cooperation service. These modules fully cover the preservation life cycle of digital objects. In fact, the NDPP's archive system is a dark archive system composed by 2 platforms. This part It's the archive data management platform, includes functions of transmission manager, ingest manager, archiving manager. It's mainly responsible for archive and preservation and only accessed by archivists. The other part as the public access platform. After trigger event, it will be provided to users for accessing to subscribed content according to the contract which is publisher, such as browsing and searching functions, as well as full text downloading. Like most of you, NDPP has realized the importance of trust on digital preservation activities. And we have strived to build up trust from many aspects. First, we want to build a trusted repository, includes a verified ingest and archiving process, a serial system and controlled operations, and mutually agreed trigger event and access management procedures. More important, to establish audit and certification process, we have internal periodic auditing and reporting, and also do yearly remote auditing and on-site auditing. We also promote organizationally sound operations, such as formalized operational structure, sustainable financial support from NSTL and archiving institutions, professional personal management. Since the beginning of NDPP, we actively participate in and keeps working with the preservation community. In 2015, we called for signing the common statement on digital preservation in China. And for now, it's already signed by over 200 libraries. This statement highlights inherent preservation rights to implement local self-controlled and reliable archive, to form a national cooperative program, and part of requirements in subscriptions. In 2016, we convened experts and managers from different domains and hold the highest level scientific conference in China, Xiangshan Science Conference. We try to make effort to promote national actions. We also hold training seminars on digital preservation many times. Also engage in frequent advocacy activities with library, research, and educational communities. We also involve in international communities. NDPP as the member of Keepers Register since 2012, and also take part in DPC's the World Digital Preservation Day. We have benefited a lot from them. Actually, both NSTL and NSL have a long relationship with IPRIS. As part of NSL and NSTL, we hosted the first IPRIS conference in 2004. And we also hosted the first IPRIS conference in 2007. Up to 2019, we have attended to most of IPRIS conferences. In 2021, NDPP will support Chinese hosting of the IPRIS 2021. Here, coming to the last page, future effort. In the first presentation, Professor Zhang have introduced more about this topic. Here, shortly in the future, we will expand the coverage of archived resources, especially more land societies and special publishers, and also include open access publications. We will further strengthen the trustworthiness of NDPP. We will continue our technical and operational efforts, also include administrative efforts. We will serve as a national mobilization and coordination platform for knowledge and heritage institutions, for user communities, for newly development R&D and E environment. Also, NDPP will serve as a national representative to work with international communities. And NDPP will go on exploring on preserving the emerging information infrastructure. So that's all. Thanks for listening.
Okay, and thank you, Professor Wu. And I noticed that Andrew has a question, but you want to raise it again? Andrew, about the, did you develop your own repository software in-house, or it is a third-party solution?
Actually, we developed our archive system by our team. We use Federal Repository as the base repository, and we developed managed level up the Federal Repository.
Okay, another question from Andrew is that, do you plan to get any repository certifications like ISO 16464?
Yeah, actually, we use ISO 16363.
464. Yeah.
Yeah, we use the self-auditor.
Oh.
We do self-auditor. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I was also reading there, and it's 16363. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Okay, and thank you, Professor Wu. And now we open up, we still have 5 minutes, and thank all the other all the presenters for keeping us in the time limit. And we still have about 5 minutes of Q&A, and we open to questions to any of those presenters. You can speak out, or you can write in the chat box. And David, you said you were about the National at the National Archives in the UK, and we are beginning to think that we need to take a wider look at trust. Do you want to say a few things about this? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, as part of the risk modeling work we've been doing, which I've talked about a bit earlier in this conference, we're thinking that trust just by audit and certification is a bit of a narrow view. So we've shared some of our initial thoughts in that blog post I've linked to in the chat. So we'd love to hear others' thoughts coming out of that. But we think, yeah, it might just be a bit of a narrow approach to why people would trust us, just to try and prove our processes and certify everything that's happening.
Okay, and may I respond to that a little bit? And in our negotiation with publishers, that the trust is one of the key issues that they raise quite often, and they would like to go into the very detailed technical the arrangement, etc. And we are also saying that trust is something wider than just a system, just a technical platform, etc. And so we put the trustworthiness first as the legal kind of measures, and we responsibilities and for each side on the legally binding documents and process. And also we think the trust greatly relates to the organizations that are doing this. So one of the things in selecting archiving institutions, you notice that we only have 3, and those 3 are the ones that well, basically have the capability and have the really good management and good historical performance, etc. And so that is really something very, very important. And so we also would like to convince the publishers that, well, it's the contextual, there are lots of contextual arrangements and measures that help build the trust instead of just a technical or what we call professional look at the reservation system. We are also still kind of beginning to learn and or to build up something like that. Okay, and Leanne has a question, and for the forbidden cities, and could Leanne? And it's about the 20 plus information systems developed, and as mentioned in Professor Sun's report presentation, and the integration problem. And is this already answered, or do Professor Sun would like to elaborate a little bit more?
I think maybe I need some time to consider the question.
Okay. Okay, and but it's not just a question to Forbidden City Museum. I guess it's a question to all of us, and we are dealing with a lot of changing and emerging formats and materials, etc. And so the interoperation and integrating becomes a requirement for our users and for individual systems, so that if we want to have the sustainable access to it, if we don't want the locked and separated and the fragmented infrastructure, and that is something more important now than ever. Okay, and as a moderator today, and I noticed that we basically hitting the time for the break. And I would like to thank all the participants and all the presenters for the first part of this A3.